Australia has officially entered its worst recession since the Great Depression. Economists knew the economic figures were going to be bad, but the actual numbers were much worse than anyone feared. In this video, I'm going to go over the worsening economic situation in Australia, what we can do right now to prepare for some of the darkest days that are going to come in Australia's history. If you thought learning about the economy and what a recession is boring, I'm going to make it awesome. I'm going to break it down for everyday Australians like you and me, because literally your livelihood depends on knowing how this economic machine works. So you may ask, what is a recession? Put simply, a recession is when a country's economy is shrinking rather than growing and is normally characterized by a big rise in unemployment. People spend less, businesses are firing instead of hiring, and economic output falls. Australia's economic growth is measured in something called gross domestic product, GDP, which is the value of the goods and services the country produces. This includes things like net exports, government spending, business investment, and inventories. During a recession, that value decreases for a period of time as businesses cut workers' output or shut down altogether. The definition of a technical recession is 2 negative quarters of GDP growth, which we just had. We've been talking about a recession for months now, so why is it official? The data released by the Australian Bureau of Statistics is old and backward looking. So the data that was released in June was for the January to March quarter, where we had a contraction of 0.3% in GDP. Are you guys still with me? Good, let's dig a bit deeper. The data paints a picture of an economic bloodbath with, in the June quarter, GDP contracting by a huge 7%, the biggest contraction since records began. That's right, the biggest on record, so you need to take this serious right now. Now, if you're wondering why the Australian Stock Exchange, the ASX, actually rose on the day that Australia officially entered recession, is because the share market tries to predict future earnings and normally prices in events like this in advance, and now the ASX is trying to predict future growth. That is why we saw a huge 40% decline in March, but that doesn't mean the stock market always gets it right, so always invest wisely. If you're also wondering what this is going to do to our beloved property market, will it affect property prices? The short answer is yes. The economic contraction is too deep and unemployment is going to be too high, with Roy Morgan having underemployment at 23% for the government to save the property market fully. Now, some areas may do better than others, but in Melbourne and Sydney, where there's been the most speculation and where it is most unaffordable, property prices have been declining and will continue to decline. The Reserve Bank of Australia said in an extreme but plausible scenario, property prices could fall 40%, and the Commonwealth Bank of Australia also said in an extreme scenario, property prices could fall 32%. So it's better to prepare than to be sorry later. Now, if you want some context on how bad this actual economic situation is, in 1974, where it previously had the biggest contraction in the June quarter, guess what the contraction was? That's right, just 2%. And this is 7%, so that's nearly 4 times worse. The economic situation is even worse than experts and the Reserve Bank of Australia predicted, where they thought that economic growth would only fall by 5 to 6%, but this is worse than expected, so you can't always listen to the experts. Remember, the experts were saying in March that this was just going to be a quick lockdown and we'd have a little recession, but everything was going to boom in the 3rd and 4th quarter or 2021. Well, guess what? There's no sign of a V-shaped recovery now, and they do not have your best interests at heart. The only reason why they say these things is to increase confidence, because that is what the economy and this big scheme relies on. Another record smashed was household consumption. Household consumption and spending dropped by a huge 12.1% in the June quarter, another record, because people in many cases can't spend even if they want to. The worst affected sectors were the transport sector, where it was down a huge 85.9%, followed by the accommodation and food services down 39%, and then the arts and recreation sector down 22%, where we've never seen these kind of falls in these sectors in history. Now, we'll give credit where credit's due, and Australia has done better than some other developed countries like the US, which saw a record contraction of 9.1% in the June quarter of their gross domestic product. and the UK was the worst affected of the developed countries, down a huge 20.4%. That's right, 20.4% in just one quarter. The only thing holding up the Australian economy right now is government stimulus like JobKeeper and JobSeeker, but this is now going to be reduced in September and then again in January, and then it may even be withdrawn in March, so we cannot rely on this. And also, loan repayment deferrals by the banks have also helped support the economy, but banks are going to have their 6 months check-in with customers in September, and these loan repayment deferrals are due to expire in March. On a good note for individuals, but actually bad for the overall economy, another record has been smashed is the savings rate has spiked to a huge 19.8%. And for a bit of context, during the global financial crisis, the savings rate only hit 10.9%. So this is almost double, and again this is due to, in many cases, people can't spend even if they wanted to. Now, another lie the government is telling you is that the economy was strong before we entered this recession. But last year, in the third and fourth quarter, we actually had a per capita recession. And what that means is the output per person actually fell for 2 quarters into the negative, and the only thing that stopped us from falling into recession was immigration and population growth. But now, with the borders closed and immigration and international students coming into the country, coming into a halt, this is not going to be able to save us like it did last year. Now, these numbers just hit a statistic milestone box and won't come as to any surprise, as more than 1 million Australians who lost their jobs, and it also doesn't include the impacts of the second lockdown in Victoria. You may be asking, okay, this is bad, but are we past the worst of it? And to be honest and short, nobody knows. We're in such uncertain times, there's no playbook for the economic situation that is going on right now, because this is caused by a health crisis mixed with an economic crisis. So really, things are very uncertain and we do not know what will happen in the future. Now that we got all that technical jargon and mumbo jumbo out of the way, what does this mean for everyday Australians like you and me, and what can we do to prepare and even thrive in this recession? Now, you may already be feeling the impacts of this recession. You may have lost your job, taken a pay cut, put your mortgage repayments on hold, or reduced your spending. But for many, they haven't felt this recession yet, and it is time to prepare right now. Now, I can't give financial advice because I do not know your situation, but what I'm doing and what most households normally do in a recession is they pay off high interest debt. And high interest debt is really anything over 4 to 5%. And you want to start with the highest interest payment first, smash that down, and then go on to the next one. Also, while you're paying off high interest debt, you want to either increase or start an emergency fund, not have an emergency credit card like many Australians have. And you can do this by reducing the 3 biggest expenses that most Australians have, which are housing, transportation, and food, and I'll tell you how. You can reduce your housing expenses greatly by negotiating your rent right now. Rents are being slashed. You can also negotiate your interest rate on your mortgage because they have also been slashed. You can possibly downsize, and if it is possible, you may even want to consider moving back in with mum and dad to help yourself out and also to help them out. You can also greatly reduce your transportation costs, where if you can work from home and no longer need your car by selling your car, because that's one of the biggest expenses that will really hurt your budget. But if you must have a car, you can downgrade to a cheaper model and a more fuel efficient model, or even on the days that you're not using your car, you can actually rent them out now. Now, if you're at home, you can meal prep all your meals now that you've got all this time on your hands, which will greatly increase your savings for your food bill. And also you can reduce your impulse buying, where you spend $5 here, $10 there on snacks and drinks, which will greatly add up over the month and over the years. Now, something that I know is very hard to do, but literally you do not have a choice, you have to do this right now, is find ways to diversify your income. You can do this by starting a business that doesn't have any costs, like a cleaning business, a lawn mowing business. I don't know, I'm sure there's something you can think of which doesn't take any risk or huge amounts of capital to start, to diversify your income from your job. Or if you can't think of a business, start a part-time job, or hey, even like me, start a YouTube channel. I know it may sound tough, but tough times call for tough measures, and when times get tough, the tough get going. So I have to give you this tough love that you do have to get your finances in order and diversify your income, because many of us have never lived through a recession like this. Even the 90s recession wasn't as bad as this economic contraction. Now, I know it may sound all doom and gloom, but if you do prepare and follow those steps that I've said, you will be okay, and you may come out of this recession in one of the best financial positions, or find opportunities that you've never thought of before in your lifetime. If this recession isn't a big enough wake-up call for you to stop spending every dollar you have and reduce your expenses and financially get in a better financial position, I don't know what will. The government and the media will lead you into a false sense of security, saying that everything's going to be okay, because again, the economy and everything in this country relies on confidence. And if that confidence drops, it'll make this recession worse, and it'll make this recession deeper. Let me be very clear, they do not have your best interests at heart. The only interest they have at heart is their own, and also the growth of the economy, even if it comes at the detriment of living standards for everyday Australians. Also, what they were able to do during the last recession in the 90s is they cut interest rates from 17% to 5%. That's right, a huge reduction of 12% in the cash rate, meaning that people were able to increase their balance sheets by the mortgages being reduced significantly, which helped increase property prices. But with the cash rate already at 0.25% and not much room to drop, they can't use this trick anymore. I know in Australia we have the she'll be right mate attitude, and we're the lucky country, we're different, it won't happen here, it'll never happen here, but that luck is running out, so it's best to be overprepared than underprepared. Please, I urge you to prepare right now. People are not taking this recession serious. That's why I'm putting out this message, because there's enough spooking on the media and by the government. There needs to be an alternative view and someone calling it out for what it really is. So please take this serious, prepare now, and hey, if I'm wrong, at least you'll be in a much better position. For all my loyal viewers and subscribers that are still watching, you're awesome. And please smash the like button if you haven't already. Comment your thoughts below. What do you think will happen to the economy? And subscribe, because I'm going to keep you all up to date on what's really happening in the Australian economy, the property market, how you can get ahead. So please subscribe, and of course, I'll see you in the next video.